Well, kia ora, good afternoon everybody. Can I just say firstly thank you so much for being here today. I hope you've been able to follow along with the proceedings. We've certainly had I think a very successful first 24 hours. The vibe of our investors that have come from all over the world. We've got 107 organisations from 14 different countries representing $6 trillion is incredibly positive, and we've had some very good sessions, as you know, presenting some of the investable opportunities and some of the context for the country and why we are such a great investment. I guess the key thing is, well, why are we doing all of this? Well, fundamentally we're doing it because we want more money into the country so that we can actually get more money into Kiwis' back pockets, and that's why we're here. So with that, I'd just say, you know, some very consistent messages from last night that I've talked to the delegation about, certainly about how New Zealand is now open for business and investment, that in a world that's increasingly volatile, we're a great safe haven, and importantly, this is a government that is obsessed and fixated on growth. And as you can see, in the last 14 months has done a number of things to make sure that we welcome that capital to this country so that we can get our businesses better funded and actually get money back into people's pockets. With that, happy to take questions.
I know it might seem a little bit of a crude question and quite simplistic, but how much money are you hoping to get from these investors?
Well, I mean, we haven't set ourselves a target, but let's be clear, we're coming from a long way back. The reality is that New Zealand over a number of years has really done a poor job of attracting and welcoming capital to New Zealand, and we know that that can make a big difference. You know, I was in Wanaka actually, I was thinking about it this morning on Thursday, and I was at a company called Hector Eggers. They're in Cromwell, and they're actually make prefabricated wooden panels, and it was really interesting to me. It only came about and it's a truly world-class business, you know, high quality wood panels that actually enable 5-storey buildings to be built, but it's 55% Swiss capital, 45% New Zealand capital, and it's not just the money that's enabled the building of a world-class company in Cromwell, but it's all the knowledge and the know-how of how they build houses and buildings in Europe that's been applied into that business here, and all those connections that happen around those markets. So, you know, and then when you walk through the factory, it's a state-of-the-art factory with outstanding equipment and a really motivated workforce that are really pleased to have a great job with a good paying job sitting in Cromwell. So, you know, that's the intention, is to make sure that we really open up particularly a big focus on public infrastructure, which is why you've seen my ministers here talk about what they have available now and what they will have available coming. I thought we had an excellent session with the iwi leaders, and in our breakout sessions, which we had over lunch with different groups, they made great contributions as well. And then obviously tomorrow we'll showcase a few more of the growth sectors that we think that they might want to be tuned to as well.
But in terms of the capital, are we talking billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, just some sort of information?
Well, tens of billions is what we're looking for, and that's when you think about a project like even the Northern Expressway, which Chris Bishop talked about earlier in the week. You know, that is a big project. It's a massive project. We've talked about it for years and years and years. We could keep talking about it for another 20 years, or we can actually decide to get on and get things going. And so, you know, that is, yes, it's billions of dollars that we need to invest, but it unlocks billions of dollars more for a region like Northland. That will be the single biggest transformative thing that we can do as a Northland Expressway. And stop talking about it, but actually do it.
Where does the money come from to actually, you know, in terms of the money that you're paying these firms, the Crown's contribution? Where are you going to find the money to make these investments worth their while?
Well, that's what we are very conscious of, is that we need to work within a set of financials that we have, but actually being able to partner with private capital, whether it's actually domestic pools of capital through our superannuation funds that are here in New Zealand, or as we're focusing today on a lot of our foreign capital. The reality is we're able to get infrastructure built sooner and faster than we would if we were just relying 100% on our own balance sheet. So yes, you're right, the government needs to invest as well. We need to sequence those investments, which is what we're doing through the infrastructure pipeline that we're building out. That will be a 30-year pipeline of key projects. But the important thing here is that, you know, we know the difference that good infrastructure makes to building regional economies, and it's really important that we pull it forward rather than actually waiting for the government eventually to have some cash around. It will be infinitely more expensive, and being able to do it in partnership gets the thing done faster.
Some of the advice you've received on infrastructure since coming to government has warned that the construction capacity in New Zealand is limited, and you can't do a lot of big infrastructure projects at once because the workforce just isn't there. And you know, given what's happening in the economy at the moment, the workforce isn't actually growing, and some parts of the construction workforce is shrinking. I mean, what are you telling these? What are these investors telling you? What are you telling them in regards to fixing that problem?
Yeah, look, a lot of the conversations we've had in the breakouts and smaller groups has been, and a message that I've had consistently and I'm aware of, is that, you know, what Chris Bishop and I are trying to do is to make sure that we put in place scaffolding around the management of infrastructure. So having a proper infrastructure and funding and financing company, having a 30-year pipeline of infrastructure investment, having the 10-year city and regional deals agreed between central and local government. All of that gives a lot more certainty and clarity as to what's happening. And I think when you've got that certainty through something like a 30-year infrastructure pipeline, frankly, you take some of the peaks and troughs out of the workforce planning that you see. That is a natural piece of building and construction tied into an economic cycle, but actually you can avoid some of the worst excesses of it if you've got some clarity about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to roll into. Sorry, Thomas.
What's your message to firms? I mean, even this year, right now, there are firms in the infrastructure sector, there are workers in the infrastructure sector who are facing a pretty difficult time and are thinking of crossing the ditch, frankly. What is your message to them to get them to stay? Well,
I'll just say to you, there's a number of infrastructure companies that are here with us as well, and they are feeling there are some that are feeling really incredibly positive. I don't deny it's been a tough and difficult time, but actually this summit is the reason why we're doing that, is we actually want to lock in on a clarity of a pipeline of projects that actually they understand that's coming at them, that they can build their workforce around. I thought it was really interesting. I'd gone to the Central Interceptor, and we have an Italian company here that's actually got the drilling capacity and the big boring drill here. And there was risk of them taking that away, but actually by providing certainty to the structure of water care, by actually thinking about the Three Waters program that we have across the country, they're telling me last night, you'll be pleased to know, Prime Minister, we're going to keep the drilling equipment here in New Zealand, which keeps the workforce here as well. So this is exactly why we need this summit, because it's actually providing the clarity about how we want to manage things going forward, so that if you are an infrastructure company or if you are an investor, you can actually plan for that over a longer run. Sorry, Zane? So I'll come back to Zane. Yeah.
If there is a particular reason why we couldn't be inside the summit today?
No, it's just that this is a summit where we want to be able to get into it with our investors. We've tried to be as transparent as possible by providing you the setup here so that you can do it. We've tried to give as much access to ministers when they're free, but we're in the rooms, sitting down, having side meetings, working our way through opportunities, and that people are coming to us saying, hey, listen, we're really excited or interested in this, and we're plugging them into the right officials and the right ministers that we're here. So I think we've done a great job of trying to make sure that we can share with you as much as we possibly can and as be transparent.
Of this conversation?
A lot of it is hyper confidential. You've got investors from 14 different countries that have come into New Zealand. They want to learn about the approach of the government. Some are very literate about what is here, and they then want to talk very specific things, and that's entirely appropriate that we do that. I think we've found the right balance for you.
We have been able to see the panels, for instance, though, so we have been shut off for probably half proceedings?
No, there's been a couple of panel sessions at the end of the major set piece speeches that you would have seen from the ministers, and then we've had breakouts over the course of working lunch as well, where we've actually had different topics. I was leading a finance and investment group, and so I think we're trying to find the right balance for you. Yep.
Given obviously deals aren't going to be signed here today, how do you come away tomorrow knowing this has been a successful?
We can see what's building, and we can see that there's massive interest, and we can see the way that people are engaging with us and talking to us about the kinds of projects they want to be involved in, what the next steps for them are about putting a consortium together to be able to make a bid for those. And we already know that there's a number of people, even prior to the summit, that in light of some of the earlier conversations we've had, that's starting to build. Them actually being here together helps as well, because many of them work together on big projects in Australia, in New Zealand, in the past in New Zealand, and other parts of the world as well. So I think we can tell that there's great enthusiasm. We're now making it really clear how you do engage with the government, so we move from the talk into the action, because that's what we really want to see happen.
Do you have a number of PPPs you'd like to build to get agreement on in the next while? We obviously saw courthouses, prisons.
Yeah, you've seen us try and give as much visibility as we can around the health, education, justice, corrections portfolios, and we're just saying we're very open to that. I think our thinking on public-private partnerships is, Chris Bishop did some great work reframing that after 12 years as to exactly what we've learned that's worked well, but we've got some very, very successful public-private partnerships in New Zealand that have been outstanding, and so we've tried to codify that, as you saw in the last couple of months with our PPP process, but we haven't set a set number, but we're just making sure we're open and up for anything and everything, because at the end of the day, what do we care about? We care about getting infrastructure built. Why do we care about that? It's fundamentally so that New Zealanders can actually get more money into their pockets. I've told this story many times, but it's interesting, the Waikato Expressway, which we all take for granted now, is a great piece of roading. But if you can remember a time before that happened, I remember a year or so ago meeting a vet, and she said to me, Chris, I do 1 or 2 more farm visits because of the Waikato Expressway that I couldn't do before. Her income goes up, and she said, I can get home to my 2 little girls at the end of the night in a much quicker way because of that roading network. So we know when we build great quality infrastructure, we're actually creating economic benefit as well as social benefit, and that's what we're fixated on. We are less hung up on ideology. We want projects built. We're beyond the talking. We're beyond the meetings. We actually need to get stuff happening.
So on the Northern Road,
Yep.
it was 2032 that first stage through to Te Hana. You talked before about bringing projects forward. How long will it take to build that road entirely from Auckland to Whangarei?
Well, it will take some time, but obviously, now from now in this term of government, we're kicking off the first phase. Chris detailed that, I think, pretty well earlier in the week, that we've got work underway to find an alternative route through the Brenderwins, and that thinking has already started, and that work will continue. And then obviously the third phase up from Port Marsden to Whangarei is we think that's a bit more of a known quantity, but there's some processes that we've got in there as well. So the bottom line is we start construction now in phase 1, and then we continue to go out in the second term and continue to progress Brenderwins and the rest of it.
It's 15 or 20 years away, doesn't it, from the...
It will be. It'll take some time. Yeah, absolutely. But the key thing is we want to move as fast as we possibly can, and the fact that we're actually saying, look, that project phase 1 is actually ready to go right now, so let's get that up and running and moving. We are speeding up public works access. You would have seen some of the thinking that we did announce last weekend around that. There's more reform of the Public Works Act to come. Because there's a lot of experience in New Zealand where it hasn't been a great experience. It takes too long. We haven't got all the consenting in place. We haven't purchased all the property in place. You sign up a PPP and a lot of things are still moving feast. We want to try and make it as frictionless as possible and do everything that we can as a government to make it as efficient as possible through our legislation that enables this development to happen.
Are you going to put together a menu?
Sorry.
Are you going to put together a menu of private projects as well as the ones that you've got for publicly? Like you've got the market-led proposals that have gone to NIFCO, for instance. Are you going to open that up to investors that have been here today, for instance, so they can see what the private options are on the table that they can invest in aside from those?
Yeah, look, our major focus is on making sure that we can present really strongly the public infrastructure bits with government. That's the reason we did want iwi in here, because they've got obviously some good infrastructure projects, but some other activity that they've got relationships with as well. And the third bit is obviously the private company and the private sector pieces. We're going to foreshadow the sectors tomorrow, but again, with Invest New Zealand, we've actually got a vehicle by which an overseas investor that might want to partner with a local company in a particular sector, advanced aviation, renewable energy, clean tech, aquaculture, whatever it may need to be, can actually try and make that handshake happen as well. Okay, sorry, Luke.
Prime Minister, just on, if this all goes well and you have billions of bucks coming in for roads, courts, and prisons, and all sorts. I mean, you've talked a bit about the kind of framework around it all. I mean, are you confident that the framework is there, or what you have in place is actually there to handle and to coordinate? This kind of goes to Thomas's point, but to coordinate and make sure that turns into buildings that don't just pressure on inflation and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're coming, at a place where we can just carry on doing things the way we've been doing it, and we all know that that's unacceptable. That just doesn't cut it anymore. And so we have thought very deeply. We have studied other places around the world that actually have created those mechanisms and infrastructure or scaffolding around how you get infrastructure built, that I think we've done that well. The 30-year plan, the NIFCO company, the Invest New Zealand, the city regional deals, all of that gives us a structure which we previously haven't been working to. And it's made the process highly political. It is interesting. We've got a Montreal investor here, and I was thinking about the Montreal light rail experience versus the New Zealand light rail experience. Both 5 to 6 years. Theirs has been done within 5 and people are using it. We went through a 6-year experience, wasted $300 million and couldn't even agree a route, funding, financing, just carried on having conversations. Now, around the world, that is the standard that I want New Zealand to lift and aspire to, that actually modern, small economies like us should be able to have very good processes to make sure that we can progress infrastructure and sequence it well, and that's partly why we need the pipeline. But actually we can definitely manage this, and we can do this better than what we've been doing by a long shot.
David Seymour this morning.
So let's go to the back. I'll come back to.
What conversations have you had with BlackRock about the exit from Solid Zero?
Well, basically, firstly, BlackRock was invited here, but they're not here. They have a wholly owned subsidiary that's an infrastructure specialist company that's here. Nicola Willis and some of our other ministers have had direct conversations with them about what a shambles it kind of was, and we've made that position pretty clear.
David Seymour this morning confirmed.
Sorry?
David Seymour this morning confirmed that there is an Australian company that has stepped up to provide some of the school lunches because of Labelle's liquidation. How do you feel about this program now going to Australia to provide some Kiwi lunches?
Well, I'd get less hung up on it. I'd be thinking very clearly about how do we get lunches to kids that actually need the lunches. That's why we have a state free lunch program. As I've been saying, this is genuinely needs to be designed for kids that actually are coming to school with no lunch and are hungry and therefore will not learn. And so, ideally you'd love it if parents took responsibility and provided their kids lunches. But in this case, we're saying no. We're always going to have a good state, a state-funded free lunch program. We've had some challenges around it, and ultimately, I'm tasking David to deliver the outcome, which is good, consistent, reliable, good quality food.
We've got to go, everyone. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you very much. See you guys.